Kip, what's up, man? Glad to be joining you for another round of Ask Me Anything.
I think you have a slight glow. I think someone's been messing around on the mats, maybe.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't be drawing any attention to me. Don't be calling me out. None of that stuff. Just don't worry about it.
You know, a little extra training, and
You'll find
no
out.
one else is training.
You'll find out when we roll next whether I've been training or not. But I can neither confirm nor deny whether I have.
I got a message from Marcus. You remember Marcus? He was talking trash with you last time he came train.
Yeah. He said he was going to choke me with my beard, so I cut it off. I'm like, what are you going to do now?
Marcus is like, happy brown belt day. It's been 2 years.
Has it really?
Yeah. And we're chatting this morning. I thought, I don't think I'm any better than I was in that photo. And it's been 2 years. I don't know if that's a good sign.
What would be like an average time for somebody who trains regularly, let's say three to 5 days a week, for them to go from brown to black?
Brown to black?
Yeah.
I think it's probably about average 3 years.
3 years if you're training 3 to 5 days a week consistently.
Yeah.
So for you, it'll probably be like 6 years, 7 years, somewhere in there. Okay, got it. Check. For me, we're looking at maybe 2 years. I got
6
it.
months.
I just want to get on, just figure this out. Holy cow, though. Yesterday, man, when I rolled, I almost lost my lunch twice. Like legit, like my stomach wasn't queasy. I was legitimately on the verge of puking out my guts. I was like, and it's only been 2 months, man. And I'm it's not like I'm not active. Like I'm still training, I'm still running, I'm still lifting weights, so the cardio is just brutal. But I caught my second wind about four rolls in and felt actually pretty good.
Also known as anger. Yeah.
Just got pissed enough that
Well, and what's funny is I don't even know if it's just different cardio, right? Because you can have guys that are like runners.
It's
and
different.
Then they get on the mat and they're just like gassing out. So it's just
I remember that so I did CrossFit I started CrossFit about 5-6 years ago, and I got pretty heavy into it for a couple of years. And then I had a buddy of mine who came down and he stayed with me from northern Utah, and I invited him. I'm like, hey, I'm going to train in the morning. You want to come? He's like, yeah, sure. And he's strong, he's physical, he's always in good shape, and it just demolished him. And I was like, why? It was hard for me to wrap my head around, but yeah, everything's just so different. And the body's ability to adapt to what you're asking of it is insane. Like if you're telling it to run, like I think of Cam Hanes, for example. The guy runs marathons on his lunch break. And people are like, oh, how can you do that? How are your ankles and knees? And he's like, yeah, I've just been doing it so long. My body is just, this is what I demand of it. And then you have other guys who are in the gym, strength training, powerlifting. I think of like Brandon Lilly, for example. And, he adapted to powerlifting the way that or Chris Duffin is another great example, just adapted to what the body required. And then you have jiu-jitsu guys and their bodies adapt to that. And then you cross over to something else and you think you're strong, you think you're capable and in good shape, and you are for what you're doing, but not necessarily for a different practice.
Yeah, totally. Cool, man. Well, lucky you.
Yeah, feels good.
Yeah.
I remember I went to right before this COVID-19 thing broke out, and this was
That's
actually
how it broke out. You came to my gym, and that's how it spread.
Yeah, I brought it back here to Maine, dude. I've been in the Army. I'm immune to everything. There's nothing. I probably have some parasite or something that kills all the viruses anyway. So
well, I say that about being raised on a farm. I'm like,
yeah, same thing.
You know how much crap has been through my body? Like,
yeah, exactly. Like literally crap.
Totally.
I was thinking about it, and it was actually funny because I remember seeing something at your gym, in fact, and it said something to the effect of like, this was right before like everything kind of broke out, and it said something, it was a memo, and it said like, due to the coronavirus, we're not going to shake hands or something anymore. And I'm like, what the hell? Was that a joke or was that serious?
I don't know, because I remember that same sign. I'm like, okay, hold on. So we're not shaking hands, but I'm going to like full out just sweat into your mouth.
Right. Yeah. I thought it was a joke, but like it was so official. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe they're being serious about this.
Yeah. Because It's the hands that transfer. It's not nothing
Yeah.
else. Yeah.
We don't want to do like, it'd be funny. You go into the gym, they don't do like fist bump before they roll. They're just like, sorry, we're not going to do that. And then you just get right into rolling. Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Totally. Yeah.
Actually, I think there's actually something to be said for, I don't know. I guess I was going to say I'm going to tread lightly, and I just want to be like empathetic to what's going on and aware and intelligent about it. But I also think there's something to be said for, being out in public, being around other people, building up the antibodies and strengthening up your immune system through social interaction, through the things that we do. I'm not saying we need to be reckless about it, but I kind of at this point question, like, is isolation and making your immune system weaker the best strategy? I don't know. It's tough, man. Well, there's so many conflicting ideas.
Yeah, there's some surveys coming out of New York about some of the people that the highest percentage of individuals with COVID-19 are ones that were isolated in their homes and not moving around. So,
right.
I don't know. I think in the grand scheme of things, there's a whole lot of data that we don't know. And then over time, we'll probably look back at this and go, oh, yeah, that's not what we thought it was. Or, you know what I mean? And we'll be able to understand and have some retrospective, or at least hopefully we do. Anyway.
I just think this is being taken as like an opportunity to like wrestle some control. Totally. There's probably some validity to it, but not to the degree that we're being led to believe. And it's a very powerful moment for the government to wrestle control over our lives, over our finances and the economy, over the way that we show up and what we're doing and the conversations that we're having. In fact, I'm working on getting somebody on the podcast. In fact, he agreed to come on. He's a police officer, and I don't know all the details, but he's a police officer, and he posted a video like, hey, I'm not going to enforce this stuff. Like, some of this stuff is unconstitutional. And just because some member of the chain of command, like my chief or a governor or a mayor, says that we have to enforce these codes or these orders, like, they don't get to supersede what the Constitution says.
Yeah.
So he put this video out, and it's been viewed millions and millions of times just in the past couple of days. And he basically, he got fired. His police department fired him, or he's on quote unquote administrative leave until they do an investigation. And they told him to take the video down. He's like, no, I'm not taking that video down. And last I heard, he was fired. So I just reached out to him. He's like, yeah, man, I want to come on the podcast. He's like, in all honesty, the past 48 hours have just been unreal. But yeah, I want to come on and talk about it. So he's going to come on, and I was looking, they're doing like a GoFundMe for him. It seems like, if I remember correctly, again, this is just in the past 48 hours. They had a goal. A family member or a friend had set up a GoFundMe for him and his family because he doesn't have work now. And it was like $50,000 was the goal. He's at like $200,000+ already. So good. Yeah, well, for sure.
And that just proves that people are like, no, we back that, right?
Right.
We back his approach.
Exactly. So pretty wild stuff, man. We'll see how it all plays out. Well, let's get into some questions.
For sure. Yeah. So we're fielding questions today from our Facebook group. To join us there, go to facebook.com/group/Order of Man. All right. You ready for these?
I don't know. I'm a little nervous.
Oh, they're a good one.
It's not like we've done 200 of them or whatever.
You guys have never heard these questions before. These are unique questions. Never heard before questions.
All right, let's get after it.
Kurt Leach, in a recent podcast, you mentioned that your calibration objective this quarter was to finish some work in your barn. The way the battle plan is laid out in my head, I probably would have chosen to put this underneath contribution. Do you often run into situations where you have an objective that you want to accomplish that would fit in multiple quadrants? How do you approach these situations?
Yeah, every single objective you could possibly think of spans multiple quadrants. Like if for example, here's the one he's talking about with the barn is my goal, and I changed that, by the way, and so I'll tell you that in a minute. But initially was the barn, to do the barn renovation and build out, and it would definitely fall into contribution. He's right, like it would definitely fall into contribution because I'm building that barn for the events that we're doing and making that a space business related. Yeah. But for me, that actually having the time to just be out there and work with my hands and swing the sledgehammer and see the progress, like that really helps me. That's like a form, I hate to say it, but it's like a form of meditation in a way. Like I just get lost.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's why I put it there. And I had other things for other components. But guys, we don't make decisions in a vacuum. And this is actually a very good thing. Regardless of where you start on the self-improvement journey, like I actually talk a lot about starting in the gym. Start with your physical health. I just think it's the lowest barrier to entry. I think you'll see the results quicker than any other facet. And it translates perfectly over into other quadrants of your life. So that's where I recommend starting. But that's not where you have to start. Because if you decided, you know what, I'm just going to start with my spiritual well-being. And you decided, okay, I'm going to read scriptures every single morning for 15 minutes. I mean, that's going to help you be a better husband. Yeah. It's going to help you connect better with your kids. It's going to help you lead more effectively at work. It's going to help every facet of your life. If you decide, I'm going to get in shape, and so I'm going to focus first on spending an hour in the gym every single day, and I'm not going to eat any crap, like no processed sugars, processed foods, that sort of thing. And that's the only two things you did. You're going to be a better husband. You're going to be a more energetic father. You're going to be a more successful employee or business owner because of that thing. So that's the beauty of it. It doesn't matter where you plug into the system. What matters is that you plug in, and then you'll see that this is all cyclical and it all is interconnected in ways that maybe you didn't even initially think. So yeah, that's why I chose to put it into calibration. Although I can't remember who asked this question, to his point, to Kurt's point, yeah, it could have very easily fallen into another quadrant. I just happened to put it here because that was appropriate for me.
So what do you say to the guy, the opposite scenario where a guy goes, oh, I'm going to double down on this one thing. And I'm not going to, yeah. So what's the advice there? Because you're right, it bleeds over, but there's some risk too, to just saying I'm focused on contribution, for instance.
Yeah. Well, so let me play out a scenario, which is actually fairly common. Like I'll hear a lot of guys, young men, hey, I'm in school right now and I'm so swamped with classes and
that's
courses.
My focus. It's everything.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they don't do anything else. And I get it. I understand. And I also believe to a degree that we have seasons in our lives, right? And seasons start and seasons end. And they're usually short term, 90 days, 6 months, a year, and then they're done. So yeah, I understand that. But I just think that you're doing yourself a huge disservice if you're in school, as an example, and you're not taking care of your mental health. Like you carving out just a little bit of time. I'm not talking about hours and hours a week. I'm talking about 10 minutes here, 15 minutes every single morning, and you carve that out of your day, everything else will be more effective. Like you'll be a diligent and successful student because you're doing that. Your level of focus to study and to get your test scores right and where they need to be and to be engaged will go up because you took 15 minutes to think about your mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being, or because you took 30 minutes to go in and exercise. You're just going to be a better student.
Yeah.
So it is tempting to think that because it is a season and you have to be hyper-focused on this one thing, that you shouldn't do anything else. I don't think that's advantageous. I don't. Yeah. I think you're just going to burn out very quickly.
Okay. For you guys listening to a podcast that you might be hearing some new terms, right? Like contribution and calibration and quadrants and battle plans and those kind of things. To learn more, there's really a handful of things. One, you can get Ryan's book, Sovereignty, which really lays out the entire approach around battle plans and these 4 different quadrants and how we can use them to become more effective. You can also get your hands on those battle plans at the Orderman store, store.orderman.com. All right.
Yeah.
Robert,
can I give one more thing real quick on that? Sure. So in 2 weeks, I'm coming out with a free course. It's available to anybody. It's called 4 Weeks to Battle Ready, or Battle Readiness. I struggle with the name because we don't have it quite pinned down, but 4 weeks to Battle Readiness. So if you just go to our website, orderofman.com, and sign up for our emails, you'll be the first to be notified when that course is available. And it's a 30-day course. It comes directly to your email inbox. It gives you actionable strategies that you need to do every single day. You can focus on those things, and it'll walk you through everything that we're talking about. But ultimately, it's not about what we're talking about. It's about producing the results that you want over the course of a 30-day time frame. So, yeah, that's what it's about.
Love it. All right, Robert McDowell. One of the things this pandemic has brought to the forefront of my awareness is how disconnected we've become in knowing and understanding the purpose of our Constitution and the rights and responsibilities we have as American citizens. Have you considered having a guest on who would be considered a constitutional scholar, someone who could do our enthusiasm as well as inform citizens that you have done, what you have done for encouraging males to become better men?
I'm open to that. I have not considered that specifically, but yeah, I'm certainly open to that. I actually think somebody who would be really good would be Mark Levin. Like, I think Mark Levin would be the perfect I mean, he's highly, highly intelligent. If I understand and know correctly, I believe he's a lawyer, I believe, is his background. And he knows the Constitution inside and out. Like, he is somebody I think would be very good. But if you have other suggestions, then let me know, because I'm certainly open to that. Because I agree. We don't know. And it's unfortunate, like, how many people don't understand the rights that we have and how this country was founded. It's actually pretty disturbing.
Isn't the group, what's it, Heritage Foundation?
Oh, Heritage Foundation, yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they have some good resources.
Yeah,
that's
probably.
like kind of their bread and butter, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I was signed up for their stuff for a while, or I was getting their newsletter. I think it was called Imprimis or Primus or Imprimis or something like that. Anyways.
Yeah. Either way, I agree with Robert, man. I think that would be a great episode. I'd be really interested in that.
Yeah, for sure. We got some good ones coming out, man. We've got
I saw your list the other day on your Instagram. That was pretty slick. I
mean, like we've got some very powerful guys coming on. Like, I just had a great interview with Matt Fraser, the second person to win 4 consecutive CrossFit titles. So I just had a really, really good conversation with him yesterday. That one will be released. Yeah, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Keep telling yourself that. maybe it's jujitsu. I don't know.
Well, that's the only thing I meant.
Yeah. So I had him, Stephen Pressfield, the author of Gates of Fire, which I'm reading. I haven't read yet, but I'm reading now. Have you read that book?
No.
Holy cow, that's an awesome book.
Really?
Awesome book.
Gates of Fire?
Gates of Fire. It's about the Spartans and the Battle of Thermopylae, which is like, everybody knows 300, right? The movie 300. Yeah. That's the Battle of Thermopylae. Okay. So this is actually the historical account of it. It's really good.
Oh, because that's right. The passage was
right.
The Gate of Fire, right?
Yeah. Like that. Yep. So, and then he wrote the Art of War. The War of Art.
War of Art. Yeah.
The War of Art.
And I really enjoyed that book.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And then his follow-up to the War of Art was, I think it's called Do the Work, I think. He also wrote, if I understand correctly, he wrote the Legends of Bagger Vance. So
really,
the guy's very talented. He's coming on. Huh. Dave Rubin, the author of Don't Burn This Book. That one should be really interesting. I'm sure people will hate me and despise me because I had him on, because he's conservative.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because
kind of a polarized guy.
He's polarizing, but it's interesting because he is conservative. He used to be ultra left. He's gay and he believes in abortion, but he's a conservative. It's like
really
very interesting guy. Yeah, very fascinating man. So I'm excited to have him on. But look, this is the power of just asking people, just asking them. Right. And swinging for the fences. I've got a great lineup of potential guests and people I want to have on. And I've had a couple of people turn me down over the past several weeks, but I'm taking the at-bats, I'm taking the rips. So
yeah, I love it.
Yep.
Okay. Gary Gray. Ryan, my job is typically an action-packed job in college athletics where I thrive on adrenaline. However, during this shutdown phase of college athletics, working alone each day, I find it very dull and so far out of ordinary. Do you have one tip or word of advice to help those who usually function in a very upbeat environment with lots of people pushing through this period of dullness? Thanks.
Yeah, I still think you can create challenge with not only yourself, but with other people. Because if you're looking at sports, college sports, I mean, you're in a competitive environment. You're probably more of a red personality, I imagine. At that level, you kind of have to be, it seems like, to be competitive and to win and to be successful in that avenue. So I would just rally people together. Maybe there's some competitions that you can do online, like where you guys do a workout or you do a thing, and then you guys all submit your scores online, and you get on a Zoom call and you talk trash with each other and compete and just make it a good time. Make it fun. Totally. But also making yourself the project. And I've talked about this and I've used this term before, is like, just make yourself the project. Like what area of your life can you try something new, something you've never done before? How can you gradually level up? For me, like I was going to say jujitsu, but again, that's limited, right? But guitar, I've talked about that over the past several weeks. Like, I actually just have a lot of fun seeing how I've improved. And I was playing last night, and it was funny because my wife was there reading and I was like playing, and she's like, "Hey, do you mind if I go read in the other room?" Like, I'm like, "What? It doesn't sound good?" She's like, "Yeah, it does.
Like,
it's
practice
just
your trumpet
the drums."
downstairs.
Yeah. But so she left. She did go in the other room while I was playing, and then I was like, "Man, I don't sound awesome. I know that, but I actually sound better than I did 2 weeks ago."
Yeah.
Right. And so you start to see those incremental improvements, and it feels good and it feels exciting, and it re-energizes you and gives you some motivation to keep going. So make yourself the project. Look for things that normally you haven't done. And look, the way you view this is important too. If you're like, this sucks, this is dull, this is miserable, I hate my life, then you're making it worse. Like, you're taking a bad situation and you're making it worse because it's self-fulfilling prophecy. And I'm not saying you have to put your head in the sand and be ignorant and pretend like everything is amazing, but maybe it's actually a pretty good moment to focus on some things that you've never considered before, that you've always wanted to do but never had the space and margin to do it. And you could really use this time as an opportunity for your own personal growth and development. What if instead of thinking this was dull, you're like, "No, this is actually really exciting because I get to write that book I've always wanted to write, or I get to pick up that new hobby that I've always wanted to participate in, or I get to think about a way that I can take my college athlete training and make it available online. I never thought about that before. I didn't have the space to think about it, but now I can make it available online." And you're giving all these thoughts to these like new ideas and perspectives that had never been considered before. So yeah, the circumstances have changed. I think in a way you're believing that the default is this just a shitty situation. It's not. It's not. It's actually a very powerful situation filled with opportunities for you to create something. So look at it that way, and then find a way to create something, build yourself into something more, look for ways to add value. This goes back to the contribution objective we were talking about earlier. Add value to your athletes. You can do this if you look at it that way, as opposed to like, I'm dull, it's boring. Like, how do I fix this? Well, you fix it. You create new opportunities.
Yeah. And Gary, I think the Iron Council is a perfect example of that, right? We've done push-up challenges. We have other challenges in the past. We continue to do monthly challenges. And I found myself I think I ended up running 16 miles on a Saturday morning because of stupid challenges in the Iron Council, right? And I probably wouldn't have done that if I didn't have guys on my team running that morning as well, and kind of pushing each other via text message and on calls and stuff. And so there's lots of ways that we can level up with other people. And I think the Iron Council is a perfect example of that. We do it on a regular basis. That's literally what we do. So,
and maybe it's not as advantageous as doing it in person, but actually maybe it's better because there's better opportunities, more access to individuals you'd never have access to in any other environment. So yeah, you're like, oh, face-to-face is always better. In a lot of ways, yeah. But in some ways, like, you're going to meet people who you never would have run across. They have different ideas and thoughts and challenges and ideas that you'd never considered before. So in a lot of ways, it could actually be better.
Yeah, for sure. Austin Meach, after talking to a couple of close friends, we decided to start a men's group of between 5 to 10 men aspiring to become better in all aspects of life. What are some tactics we can address to continue to have these meetings, as well as cover topics that would keep us engaged in becoming better?
Well, like
same question, different angle. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, your topics should pertain to each other. So if there's 5 to 10 of you, I mean, if you're meeting let's just say you're meeting every 2 weeks as an example, and you've got, 10 topics, you're good for 4, 5, 6 months. I mean, just right off the bat. So what I would do if it were me is I would let each individual pick the weekly topic. So if Kip, you and me, and I picked weeks 1 and 2 were my topic, I'd give you the heads up and say, okay, Kip, like in 2 weeks, it's going to be your topic. So start thinking about what you want to address. And then that way you're engaged. And then the other cool thing about that is maybe now you moderate those 2 weeks. So it isn't always the same moderation. I moderate the first 2, you moderate the second 2, the next guy moderates the third 2, and so on. I mean, that's what I would do. I don't think this is really that difficult. I think you just have these topics and discussions. I would say be very, very careful of turning it into a Bible study. And I don't mean literally like studying the Bible. I mean, be very careful of sitting around in a circle and holding each other's hands and singing Kumbaya and praying and like that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying like what men need. And this is why I think the churches have failed men and continue to fail men, because they're doing that. They're preaching to men like they're women. And we know that women bond best in communities, right? Looking at each other, facing each other, circling up, facing inwards. That's actually a big difference between women and men. Women, when they circle up, they face inwards towards each other. When men circle up, what do? They face outwards towards the enemy.
Yeah.
Right? So we naturally as men, we don't want to sit in literal or figurative circles talking to each other, knee to knee, holding hands and talking about all of our problems. There's a time and a place for that, but very rarely is that like something that we want to do. We can actually address our problems and work through our issues when we're still standing shoulder to shoulder, but we're faced towards enemy, right? So we're engaged in a common objective or against a common enemy. And so we're still working through our issues, but we're doing it together. Like how often, I remember this playing sports, me and my buddies, like we would bust each other's balls hard. Like, dude, you screwed that up, or hey, you messed that up. And I mean, I remember guys like, yeah, we lost the game because of you. I mean, like hard stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so a casual observer looking from the outside in was like, oh, what an asshole. Except for not really, because that forced me or the other person who had the guilty conscience or who messed up to get better, to improve. And men really respond and engage in this way. That's why it's very difficult for me, like when I hear women who are like, oh, you guys need to be more vulnerable and need to open up. Yeah, if we were women, we would actually listen to what you have to say and we would apply it. But anytime a man tries to apply stuff like that, he feels weird and awkward and uncomfortable, and it actually produces the exact opposite result that we're trying to produce. Like women want to feminize men. It's like, hey, what you're saying is actually right. Like men need to work through their issues. You're right. We do. But we don't need to do it like women. We need to do it like men. Oh, I don't understand that. Right. Because you're not a man. So you shouldn't understand it. It's the same thing when guys say, I don't understand my wife. Well, no shit. You're not a woman. Like what makes you think that you should understand her? Now you can be empathetic and you can try to see her perspective, but you're never going to fully understand how her brain and body works. Because if you did, then you too would be a woman, but you're not. This is why men and women work well together, given that we can work through our differences and not fully understand and appreciate the differences that we have to offer. So anyways, I'm getting on a soapbox. What I would say though is like find something that you can rally against or towards so that you're shoulder to shoulder, front towards enemy, not sitting in a circle, holding each other's hands and having this sort of like prayer circle thing. And I'm not talking about necessarily spirituality. I think you guys get the point.
Totally. And I think topics could be tied to activities. So like if I'm covering a topic this week, everyone has homework. Do these actions before a call on Thursday, and then we're going to have a conversation of what did you struggle? What was the internal dialogue that you had? What do we learn through that experience? Like the more you can tie it to actually taking action, I think you'd get better engagement from men during the actual conversation itself versus just speaking in hypotheticals.
Yeah. Well, I think the thread in that, because I agree with you, and I think the foundation of that is responsibility.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you
some ownership.
That's right. You put responsibility And the responsibility doesn't end when this meeting ends. It's like, now, okay, here's what we talked about. Here's what we discussed. Here's what scenarios we went through. Now you got to shoulder the responsibility. Like, go out there. Here's your homework. Here's your challenge. Here's your assignment. That's your burden to bear for the team. And then you bring it back with what you've learned. If you're not willing to do that, like, I don't want you in my circle. And if I'm starting a men's group, like, I'm going to weed people out and invite the right people in. And you do that by giving them responsibility. And here's what happens when you give men responsibility. They either step up and you're like, cool, this is a guy I want in my corner. Or they don't, and one of two things happen. More often than not, they leave themselves. They self-select themselves out because they're like, this is stupid. I don't want to be part of this. All they do is blah, blah, blah. And really what that means is they didn't have what it takes. And that's fine. Like, if that's the excuse they want to tell themselves, hey, if somebody leaves because of that, it's like, cool, that's okay. Like, I have no ill will, but you just weren't right for the group. So you want to start selecting these, or having them select themselves out of it by giving them responsibility, because they will step up or they'll step out, and both are good for your group.
Yeah. Invite them to commit. And if they don't commit,
What are you, some sort of like missionary or something?
Is that
invite them to commit?
Well, I'm thinking of, like, we do this.
Just giving you a hard time.
When we do this in work, right? You set expectation, but the next thing is, are you going to do it?
Expectation,
yeah,
right?
Like,
for sure.
Don't just set expectation and then sit back and have fast commitment to it.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
All right, you're making fun of missionaries. All right, Daniel.
No, I'm making fun of you, not missionaries.
Well, but if that's the
I'm just giving you a hard time. Did you serve a mission, by the way?
I did not.
I didn't either.
Neither did you?
No, I didn't either.
Idiots.
So we can make fun of missionaries. All
right. Daniel Zamora. What ways can one use to develop their son's belief in God? Talking about missionaries. Ways to develop your son's belief in God.
I mean, I'm trying to think about something different than the obvious answer. Like, read the scriptures and pray and like all that stuff's right. We call those the primary answers, right? Go to church, read, pray. And they're not wrong, by the way. They're right. Yeah. But you already know that. Like, I'm trying to give you something you don't already know. Actually, you know what I would do? I guess this depends on the age and the maturity level. I would just actually talk with my son about it. And not like talk, but like get his perspective. Hey, what do you think about God?
Yeah.
What do you think about where we come from? What do you think about when we die? And then when he says, well, I think this, challenge it. Like, oh, really? Like, what? Why? Why do you think that? Like, encourage him and challenge him to build his own testimony, right? I think parents are afraid of having this conversation because, well, it's awkward, but also somebody who's a religious parent, for example, doesn't want to push their child away from it. So they're like, I don't want to talk about it because what if they go like, isn't that the reason we should talk about it? Yeah. So I ask my kids, my oldest son and I, we enjoy hunting together, and I'll ask him questions like, not always about God, but sometimes like, what do you want to do with your life? Oh, really? Why do you want to do that? Or we're sitting outside, and we're looking at nature because we're turkey hunting. And I'm like, man, look at all this stuff. Do you think like this just came together? Do you think God created it? Do you think that it's different than when God created it? If you believe, like, I'm just asking him questions out of genuine curiosity for what he believes. But also the beauty of it is that it encourages him to start thinking about it and formulating connections that he wouldn't have formulated by listening to somebody on the pulpit or hearing my testimony about God. Yeah. Like, I want him to build and foster his own, which means I need to get him thinking and working through these things. So, yeah, just look for opportunities and moments to have some powerful, powerful conversations that normally you just don't have with your kids. And I actually feel like one of my strengths is being pretty aware of the relationship I have with my kids and what my objective is, and to getting them to be self-sufficient human beings and fully capable of taking care of themselves. And even like knowing that to me is a strength that I have, like even still, it's hard for me to get into these deep conversations. It's just something that I haven't conditioned and trained myself to do. But man, when I have these kind of conversations with my kids, it's awesome. Like, I'm always amazed and surprised. I'm like, whoa, Like that was deep, for a 12-year-old kid to be talking about. And a lot of the times I come away with a perspective that I hadn't even considered before. So yeah, I just think you have these really powerful conversations. And here's what I would say. One more qualifier with these things is don't do it with an intended outcome.
Yeah.
Just do it with, I'm just curious. Like I'm just curious. I just want to ask good questions. I actually do that with a podcast now. And that's why I think the podcast is part of the reason the podcast is better now than it was 4 or 5 years ago. Because 5 years ago I would have like
scripted questions,
questions. And
try
now
to control the conversation.
That's right. And it's like, got to go this way. And now like, here's some notes from one of my conversations with Scott Carney. I just keep them in this notepad. But like, for example, let me just pull to one of these pages here.
And you're just writing those out as you're talking, like, oh, yeah, I'm curious about this.
Right. Well, so here's Matt Fraser's notes from yesterday. Like when I started this yesterday, it looked like this. So Ryan Moran's coming on this afternoon.
Yeah.
And that's my notes for our podcast.
Yeah. And you're like, what's his name?
Yeah. Got to write that down. No, I write that down so I can review back later and know who I'm talking about. But it's a blank page. Look, I'm not saying I don't know anything about this guy. Like I've read his book. Yeah. I know his topics. I know what he talks about. And then I just leave a blank page and he says something. I'm like, oh, interesting. Like Matt yesterday, for example, was talking about his rules of life, like how he identifies rules of life to live by. And I'm like, oh, that's actually really fascinating. And you can see, I just wrote it right there, rules of life.
Yeah.
And that level of curiosity without an intended outcome. Like I didn't get on the podcast thinking, okay, I got to get Matt to say this one thing about this one situation. I'm like, no, I just want to see where it goes.
Yeah.
So just be curious, no intended outcome, no motive other than to get to know your child and have them think about things that maybe they haven't thought about yet or put into words.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of those typical examples, I think, or answers that we would have given in the past is like, be the example, kind of thing. But I had a little bit of an experience just this past weekend around the same conversation where, I called up a buddy and said, hey, do you have a minute? And which we literally just like went for a walk around the neighborhood and was chatting. And it was funny because in my conversation with him, his approach to the conversation was drastically different than mine. Mine was, oh, well, that's how life works. And you have tough circumstances and you grow. Right. Translation in his world was, that's how the atonement works. And that's how God helps men change. And, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even see it that way. Like I approached that like completely from a selfish, I will do it myself kind of no involvement kind of thing from God in my life, where his thought process was drastically different. And a little bit of me like walked away from that conversation from like, well, you know what? I don't correlate some of those things that happen in my life religiously enough. Right. And because of that, my kids may not hear that in my conversations with them as much as they probably should. So I guess what I'm saying for Daniel is like, there's probably conversations where you're not maybe involving God in your life and in those conversations enough that probably could benefit that relationship with your son.
Yeah. I like it.
All right. Jonathan Pina, what is more important in today's society, IQ or EQ? Thanks. Be safe.
This is a false dichotomy.
I don't even know what EQ is.
Emotional intelligence.
Oh.
So you need to work on your IQ, Kip. Just kidding. And apparently,
I know what EQ is.
Yeah, and me criticizing you means that I need to work on my emotional intelligence.
And your EQ, yeah.
That's right.
Got it.
No, it's just a false dichotomy. It's like, why do you have to pick one? Sometimes you need to be intelligent. Like
both are important.
Right.
Yeah. So
I don't see the point of asking this question. Like, so what if I said emotional intelligence is the right answer? Then, okay, so what are you going to do with that information?
Yeah. If you're too dumb to do anything.
And I'm not trying to dismiss the question. I'm just saying like, this isn't, I just don't know what the point of the question is. You should develop both, and certain situations are going to call for one or the other, or more heavily weighted towards this or that. Like, for example, when we're talking about the ramifications of COVID-19, then probably the way that we lay out the strategy for overcoming it would be an intelligence discussion. Like, we're going to look at the facts as objectively as possible, and we're going to make an objective recommendation based on the data and information. Now, the way that you share that with an individual who's going to be directly impacted by the decisions you're going to be making requires a heavy dose of emotional intelligence, right? So there's the logical side, which is important. Why would we dismiss that? And then now how I communicate it is going to be more of the emotional side of things. So that it doesn't, like, it's just not a great, like, not a solid question, because the answer doesn't like lead you to anything. Like, you need to work on both, and you need to understand when both are appropriate, when the other one isn't appropriate. Some people, myself, I need to work probably more on emotional intelligence, because I tend to be pretty fact driven, pretty black and white. There's not a whole lot of gray in my life, and this is the way it is because this is the way it is. Yeah. And then sometimes that comes off, and I communicate it that way because that's how my mind works. And then I end up, hurting friendships or insulting my wife when, like, I didn't mean to. It wasn't what I intended, but the way that it was received was insulting. And then looking back on it, I'm like, oh yeah, I could kind of see how that was. Although that wasn't my intention. My intention was like, well, here's the facts. Here's the information. What's your problem? Yeah. Right? So some of us need to focus more on emotional intelligence, and some of us need to focus on actual intelligence, what the situation calls for, and based on your own personal, your own personality. Okay.
Paul Ives, I took over leading a 6th grade boys youth group virtually because I didn't want to see it fall apart during the quarantine. Besides faith lessons, we are discussing what other things to do. What other virtual things do you think we might be helpful in teaching these boys in transition to manhood?
First of all, is this Paul?
Paul, yeah.
Awesome job, Paul. Like, way to step up. That's what I'd say first. And like, above anything else, like, I didn't want this to fall apart for 6th grade boys, or were they 6th graders or 6-year-old boys?
Yeah,
6th graders. So they're what, 9, 10 years old? 10, 11, somewhere in there?
11, 10, 11.
Yeah. So awesome. I love that. Congratulations, and way to epitomize what we talk about here, which is leading, not just ourselves and our families, but expanding that, or you're doing that, you're living that, which is cool. Yeah. As far as topics, I think he said faith is the first thing he said. Is that right? Yeah,
besides faith lessons.
Yeah. Physical fitness. Yeah. Like, my son has every Thursday night, he does a virtual call with some boys his age in our church. And the one they just did is physical fitness. And he's like, Dad, I didn't run my mile. I'm going to get on there, and I'm going to be, like everybody else probably ran, and I didn't do it. I'm like, well, let's go run it real quick. He's like, yeah, but it's in a half an hour. I'm like, dude, it's not going to take us 30 minutes to run a mile. It's going to take us like 10, right? He's like, I'm like, you said you would. Do you want to go there and be the kid who didn't do it, or do you want to be the kid who did? He's like, I want to be the kid who did. I'm like, cool, let's go run it. And we went and ran it and got it done, and he came back. And he talked to the boys about it. And it was funny because after the class, I said, so how did it go, man? Like, everybody else run it? He's like, I was the only one who did it.
Awesome.
And I was like, how'd you feel? Did you feel like you shouldn't have because nobody else did? He's like, no. I was like, actually really proud that I was one of the few or the only one who actually did it. Yeah. It's like, yeah, you should be proud. Good for you. So I think there's ways to like incorporate the physical fitness challenge of it, like we talked about earlier. Yeah. Money is a big issue. Like, have them, I don't know, start a little business or do some chores around the house or do a budget. I think having the financial discussion is important. You could have a book of the month club where you read something. For those boys, I would say like Hatchet would be a really good book. Maybe even 11, I don't know, is 11 maybe like into Harry Potter and some of that stuff?
Yeah, I think so. And you guys could even like read the chapters together. Like, okay, we're all going to read this chapter and then talk about it, right?
Yeah.
So then that way it's a little bit more group activity.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, read good books, physical fitness, money. You've got the faith thing covered. Relationships, service to other people. That would actually be a really good one, is like, how do you serve other people, whether it's your sister, your brother, your parents, a neighbor. You know, maybe you need to go pull some weeds for the elderly couple that lives next door. So you challenge them to go do that, or you do it all together. That might be hard with what we're dealing with now, but yeah, I think those are some pretty good topics that I would personally address and deal with. You know what else I would do is I would look in the Facebook group, and I would look for the reoccurring issues that you see in the Facebook group, and I would say, there's a topic that needs to be addressed. In fact, that is what we do.
Yeah, for sure. And what we've done for our young boys too is find some inspirational people to come on to the Zoom call, you know, so they're not just hearing from you every time, right? Yeah. We had, I was looking up his name, Satima Gali.
Oh yeah.
Like a football player.
Satima's awesome. Yeah, he's a stud.
And so we had him on, talk to the young boys in our neighborhood and kind of give his take. And I think we're lining up someone for tomorrow as well. So,
yeah.
You know, try to find someone inspirational, athletes that these guys might look up to, and that might draw their attention more than just hearing you.
On that same note, Kip, that's a really good idea. One thing that I also encourage you to do for 10 and 11-year-old boys, they may not be able to moderate like a full meeting, like an hour long. I don't know how long your meetings are, but let's say like 45 minutes. Yeah, at least a component of it.
Yeah.
You know, like, hey, the first 10 to 15 minutes, Johnny, you got this one right here. Here's how this goes. I want you to find your favorite quote and share with us your favorite quote and why that's important. 3 things that went really well for your week, 3 things that didn't go so well, and then your plan to improve upon them.
Perfect.
You know, you put them on a little bit of a hot seat and they got 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, and then you cover the rest of it.
Yeah. I love that. I did a thing for the youth around public speaking, and it was really fun because we covered tips, and then literally right after I was like, all right, Ethan, you're up.
Yeah.
And then I just gave him a topic. Like, he wasn't even prepared. I'm like, all right, your topic is this. Go. Yeah. Cool. And then
How old was he?
These boys are 12.
12. So, I mean, they're right there.
Yeah. And it was great. Like, and then afterwards we talked about it. Okay, what did he do wrong? Oh, he used a couple times, and he was maybe quiet. He wasn't, projecting well enough. And come up with some strategy, and they really love that. They love
and talk about what he did well too. I'm sure you did that, but just make sure we bring that to attention.
I just focus on the stick.
Yeah, it's like, you suck. You sucked. Here's everything.
Just stop.
How old are you?
You're horrible.
You're acting like you're 10, not 12. You're presenting like a 10-year-old.
Yeah, now everyone's like, no wonder why Kip's kids are like, hate him.
Yeah, that's right.
Total jerk. Oh man,
that's cool. Right. I like what Paul's doing.
Yeah, I love that too. Greg Wanberg. Oh, my cursor's in the way. I can't find. All right. Finding vision and purpose when it's hard to identify. I've got a great life, a good job, and I'm constantly finding ways to improve as a man, husband, father, and employee. But I do not carry the conviction of purpose and something greater than me.
I would start with looking at the men that you admire. Like, pick out 5 to 10 men that you really respect. Maybe that's your father or grandfather or brother, even a neighbor, or somebody that we've had on the podcast, whoever. Just 5 to 10 men that you really admire and respect, and start documenting all of the reasons you admire and respect that individual. And then I think what you're going to find is you're going to find some commonalities between those people. Those commonalities are going to be the things that you value the most. So if you notice, for example, the 10 people that you picked out, all 10 of them are strong family men. They're like patriarchs of their family. Then that's a pretty good indicator that that is something that you truly, truly value. If all 10 of them have the ability to communicate effectively in their public speaking and they present ideas well, then your ability to present ideas and to be influential and motivational to other people is something that you probably really value and something that you aspire to have and be in your life. So when you start to identify these common values and characteristics that these individuals have, then that will lead you to the kind of man that you want to be. Now you start writing this down. Okay, well, I want to be somebody who can articulate his thoughts clearly, can share big ideas in a way that is easy to understand, can rally hundreds and thousands and tens of hundreds of thousands of people towards a common objective and a common purpose. Then you ask yourself, so you start working backwards, what kind of man do I need to become in order to do X, Y, and Z? So if I want to inspire, which is personally, like, I want to inspire millions and millions of men across the planet to lead themselves, their families, their businesses, their communities well. If that's the kind of individual, that's my vision for who I want to be, then I've got to reverse engineer and connect the dots between the type of man that I need to show up as. So if I'm a fat, lazy, overweight, out of shape piece of shit, frankly, am I going to inspire millions of men to lead themselves and other people effectively? Of course not.
Get in shape.
Right. I mean, I got to start there, right?
Yeah.
If I'm not willing to read good books and listen to ideas and study other presenters who share ideas in powerful ways, how am I ever going to do that for myself? So that means that I've got to be able to study and research those who can communicate effectively and learn their strategies and their techniques and the way they show up. I've got to do this podcast, for example, because then I get to put these things into practice and see where I'm strong and where I'm weak and how I can shore my weaknesses up. But it all starts with the values that you have. And by the way, your values aren't wrong, right? So you hear a lot of guys will say things like, oh, well, if you don't care about your family, I mean, everybody cares about their family to some degree, but I know people who Andy Frisilla right now, like, he doesn't have children. He's got his wife, and I know he leads himself and her well. He doesn't have kids. I don't know if that's in his stars or if that's something he wants to do or not, but I know that he wants to be influential in the business space. And he wants to motivate people to live their lives the way they want to live. Like, that doesn't make him wrong, because I want to be a family man first. Like, I want to raise my kids and be involved and intimately connected with what they're doing. Well, he doesn't have that. So it's different. And neither one of us are wrong. He's not wrong. I'm not wrong. He's not right. I'm not right. We just value what we value. And then when you work backwards into what kind of man do you need to become in order to accomplish that vision that you have for yourself?
Right. And how important do you think, or does it relate in regards to what you're good at? Right. Because I've heard that too, is like you can ask those around you that, your loved ones or people that are around you, and they will also give some insight of what you're good at, like what you do that inspires them. And that can maybe even spark those ideas of like natural talents and that is somewhat related to purpose. Do you agree with that idea or no?
Kind of. Let me work into that a little bit.
Yeah.
What you do, like I'll say it this way. What you do for work, for example, isn't like what you're good at.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so Simon Sinek actually addresses this in his book, Start With Why. If you take a baseball player, for example, like the best baseball player in the world, he's good at baseball because he's good at other things. Yeah. Not because he's good at baseball.
Totally.
Like, that's what we have to understand. Like, Jordan, LeBron James, I mean, whoever, pick somebody. They're good at basketball. Kobe Bryant. Not because they're good at basketball, but because they're good at other things that happen to make them good at basketball. And by the way, those things that they're good at could have made them great at a million other things.
Yeah.
Like Kobe Bryant's focus and determination and just competitiveness and the edge that he had would have made him a great actor or entrepreneur or fill in the blank. It just happened to be that he was doing basketball, right? Yeah. And because he loved basketball, he likes basketball. That's part of the deal too. You got to enjoy it. But I think you got to be careful of falling into the trap of thinking, oh, I'm supposed to be a public speaker. I'm supposed to be a basketball player. I'm supposed to be this. I'm supposed to be an astronaut. Maybe, or maybe you just have these set of skills that allow you to be good at that thing, which is why you found purpose and significance and meaning in it. So yeah, everybody has strengths. Yeah. But those strengths, they're not going to necessarily make you good at that one thing. Like, there isn't one thing. oh, that's the thing that you were born to do. No, it's not. You just happen to use your set of skills, applied them effectively, and you became that.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe I'm rambling on that one a little bit,
No,
I just don't want
agree.
people to get caught up in the identity of like, what do I do for work?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You can do anything and you can be successful at it, assuming that you're using that skill set.
And a lot of those talents and skills transcend, obviously, what we do for work. Yeah.
Of course. Like I wasn't destined to become the founder of Order of Man. It was that I was diligent, I was dedicated, I enjoy talking and having this conversation, I enjoy sharing ideas, I'm never at a loss for my opinion, and that happens to make me pretty decent at this.
Totally.
And it could have been, that's why I was a good financial planner too. Same set of skills.
Yeah. Copy. All right, Matt Nugent. I'm not sure why he's asking me this question. So Kip, can you address how to go about getting your wife's significant other on board with your hobbies or on board with you taking time to take care of yourself? Both of us working full time and having 7-month-old makes it very difficult to find time. Any time that I do, no, it's bad grammar. She feels that I would rather be doing these things than spending time with them. So he's just assuming that I'm more selfish with my time than maybe you are.
Or that you know how to communicate that better to your wife than I do.
I don't know. Ask my wife. I think it goes back with a lot of things. Right now, we're in the process, whether good or bad. We did a remodel of a property we have, and we're in the process of selling it. And I'm working. And unfortunately, and I'll just be really frank here, I have failed to be a team member in that remodel process. If you ask my wife right now, she's completely like, you left me this up all to myself. And, and she's upset. She's upset currently. And I think, and here's the irony. If we went through the list and say, was I supportive? From my perspective, yeah, well, I did these things and I worked on the house and blah, 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 blah. Like, and my definition of supportive is action. Guess what her definition of it is? Did I come home and go, hey, how did it go today? And what do we didn't talk about it. Right. So I would probably suggest, Matt, that a lot of it has to do with conversation more than it does anything else. And getting her on board. And let's be frank, and we talk about this all the time where, by default, you change up the game. I think we're going to all get some natural pushback sometimes because it's uncomfortable and what's going on, and they're not going to maybe see the benefit in things. But if I'm going to jiu-jitsu on a regular basis, but I'm showing up correctly when I come home, I'm pulling my weight, I'm being reliable, I'm having integrity, then she's not going to mind those things. But she is certainly going to mind it if that I'm not becoming a better man because of it, or I'm not pulling my weight because I'm lacking in another place. So I think that's also really critical. And then Ryan, you talk about this all the time, is like, give her the space and create the environment by which she has the right to do the same thing, and help her get over the idea of quote unquote feeling guilty for leaving the kids with you or whatever. Cause that does seem to be a natural default for a lot of our spouses.
Which is good. That's a good thing, right? Cause she has those motherly instincts and she wants to be involved with you and the kids. Like, that's the kind of wife I want. But then that's what you have to contend with. Look, I think it can be summed up very simply like this. How is you taking care of yourself in her best interest? Because if all you do is explain how it benefits you, then why would she be on board with that? Think about it in a client context. If you went to let's say you're my prospective client, Kip, okay? And we're going to talk about financial planning. And I come to you and I say, hey, look, Kip, if you invest with me, man, I'm going to make $10,000 more this year. and then I'm going to be able to go on vacations. And I'm going to buy that car that I wanted because, man, I really like that car. Have you seen this? It's awesome. Like, check this car out. Like, I'm going to buy that because you're going to be a client of mine.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome. Like, I don't know how it's going to work out for you, but like for me, it's going to be really good. Yeah. It sounds ridiculous.
Yeah, totally.
But we do that. Oh man, hon, I'm going to go to jiu-jitsu because it just feels so much better. And I enjoy it and it's challenging and I'm getting stronger. And I look good because I'm leaning out. Like, this is awesome. I love this. She might be happy for you because she loves you, but it's like, well, What the hell?
Like, why?
What about me? Which, by the way, if you sign the dotted line that says, I will honor and love you and cherish you, then what about me is a legitimate concern on her part.
Yeah.
So you need to communicate it and articulate it in a way that's like, hey, here's how this is going to work for you. And you're not making it up. Like, this genuinely, and then also you need to back it up with your actions. Like my wife, she encourages me to go to jiu-jitsu because she knows that when I come back, I'm more engaged. I'm more connected, that I'm more energetic, that I can lead the family and my children and with her well because I take care of myself. And she also doesn't mind having some time to read a book once the kids are in bed without having to, entertain me or spend time. Like, she's taking her time and doing her thing. And we've talked about that. It's in her best interest for me to go to jiu-jitsu a couple of nights a week.
Totally.
And because it's in her best interest, I hate using this term, but you'll understand. I've sold it that way.
Yeah.
And that way I can go do that. And she appreciates it. And she actually encourages it. She ensures that I go do it.
Yeah. And I think one thing I've used in the past whenever guys like struggle with, well, how do I, I'm really struggling with getting her on board, or I really want to do X, but I don't think my spouse will agree with it, or it's going to cause a debate. One thing that I've recommended in the past is go to her and say, I really want to do this. What would I need to be doing for you to feel okay with that? Yeah. What would I need to do for you to be on board?
I think you got to be careful on that one, though.
So you're not just appeasing, or?
Yeah, because there's a lot of guys listening who are nice guys.
Yeah, that's true.
Kip, you're not to the nice. No, I'm not. You're respectful, right? There's a difference in my mind of this quote unquote nice guy and respectful, right? You honor her, you respect her, you cherish her, but you're not like the proverbial nice guy.
Yeah.
But a lot of guys listening are. So what they think is like, you're going to go negotiate, right? Like, hon, if I do the dishes, can I go out with my buddies tonight? Like, we hear that and we're like, that sounds ridiculous. And it does. You're not. And I know you're not. I know you're not saying that. But some guys will hear it that way.
Yeah.
And they'll think like, oh, so I just got to go negotiate with her. Like I gotta ask or grovel or beg to go out and hang out with my buddies. No. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that you need to show up as the kind of man that she needs you to be, so that there isn't an issue when you're not asking for permission, but there isn't an issue when you say you're going to go do something that's going to serve you and the family well.
Yeah.
And I know that you're not saying it like that. I just know through the emails that we get, there's men who are hearing it like that, and then they'll apply it and they're like, well, now I'm acting like a little bitch. I'm like, yeah, you kind of are, actually. Yeah. Oh, well, you told me to. No, you deciphered it that way. We're not telling you that. Yeah, so we need to be aware of the distinction.
No, that's good. Good clarity. All right, we are up on, I think we had to wrap up.
Yeah, let's take one more and then we'll wrap up quick.
All right. Dmitry Golovin, any thoughts regarding clearing bad debts before making the decision to get engaged and have kids? I have about a year left before debts are completely paid off, but I wonder if more unexpected expenses will just come up that will get in the way. Should I just keep on going with life, even if debts take a tiny bit longer to pay off in the process?
Yeah, I mean, if it's not substantial, I would say, yeah, I don't think marriage is going to impact your ability to pay off your debt. In fact, it might actually help it.
Yeah.
Because our income went up when I got married. Like, she had income, I had income. Like, our income went up, our expenses went up moderately relative to the doubling of income, right, when we got married. So that actually might help it in a way. Now, if it's over the top, here's actually what I'd be more worried about, because it sounds like you're a responsible guy. Right? You're thinking about paying off
plan
debt.
This out,
right?
Debt off in a year. Like,
so here's what I'd be more worried about: what debt does she bring to the table?
Or do you know? Yeah.
And what is her approach to it? I'd be more concerned with that than what you bring to the table, because you sound like an intelligent, thoughtful, smart guy. And I'm sure your wife is, or your potential wife is too, but you better find that out right now. Because if she's coming to the table with 30, 40, 50 grand of debt, that's your debt now.
Yeah, and bad spending habits, which is worse.
Yeah. Way worse than the debt is she doesn't know how to handle the money. So if you've got some moderate debt, like I had a car loan when we got married. That's it. Maybe a small car loan. I don't know. Maybe I owed my mom $1,000 or something for deposit on a rent or something. I don't know. I don't think that's a reason to keep you from being married.
Yeah.
I would be very, very concerned with, not concerned, just very, very aware of her money habits, her thoughts around money, the debt that she's bringing in. And I think you ought to be fair and tell her the debt that you have too, so she's aware of that. She needs to be able to make a reasonable decision as well. But I'd be more concerned with that than having a little bit of debt that you're actively working on paying off.
Cool. And what a great time for you guys to sit down and say, hey, we're getting more serious. What's our game plan around debts? And when we get married and, like what a great, I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't do that, but I wish I would have.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when my wife and I got married, if I remember correctly, she had a small car loan that her dad was paying for. Well, guess who started paying it off?
Yeah.
Me.
Totally.
In fact, we bought a new car, I think, when we got married, or not long after. So it's like, it's a package deal, man. Yeah. So you better be aware of what's in the package.
Totally. And it's funny too, when Asia and I got married, it was so funny because she was like, I remember she asked once, she's like, how much do you make? And I'm like, that's interesting that you've never asked this question. And we've been dating for a while and pretty serious. Like we've already been talking marriage. And I told her and she was just like, whoa, you make way more money than I thought you did, blah, blah, blah. And then when we got married, I remember she was frustrated because she's like, where's all our money? I'm like, child support.
Yeah.
But we never talked about it. So she's like super frustrated, because she probably got some expectation like, oh man, we're going to be doing great financially. She didn't have no idea how much I paid in child support.
So look, here's what I would say. And I'm saying this as nice as I can, but it's an important lesson. That's her fault.
Yeah, we should have had that conversation.
She should have had that conversation with you.
Yeah.
So allow that to be allow that to serve as a warning for you not to let those conversations go unsaid between you and your potential partner.
Yeah.
It's not comfortable. And you know what? Her asking how much you make.
Last thing you want to talk about.
No, of course not. And her asking how much you make, that's a reasonable question for somebody who's considering partnering up with you for the rest of your life. That's a reasonable request.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It's folly to think that won't matter because it definitely will.
It matters. It matters.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, those are some good questions. We had some good ones today.
Yeah, they were unique, never been heard.
Never ever before. Yeah. All right, let's close this thing down. I got to go. So let's close it down.
Yeah. Join us online, guys, on Facebook, facebook.com/group/Order of Man. Learn more about the Iron Council at orderofman.com/Iron Council. Ryan, you already alluded to this. To learn more about getting battle ready or the battle readiness that will be coming
say
soon.
It right.
Yeah. Go to orderofman.com and subscribe to the newsletter to keep updated. And of course, you can connect with Mr. Mickler on Instagram and Twitter at Ryan Mickler.
That's
Swag
it.
in the store. Yeah.
Yes, sir. All right, guys, we'll wrap it up. Be back on Friday. I was considering giving you the topic for Friday.
Ooh, secret.
No, I'll say it. No, I don't know. No, I'll keep it. I'll keep it a secret. Just tune in on Friday. You guys will like it.
Subscribe to the podcast, and then it's just a given. So
that's right. And then it'll just show up, and you won't have to think anything of it.
It shouldn't even matter. You just listen to every episode. That's what you do.
That's what I would do.
That's what I do.
Well, good. All right, guys. That's it. We'll be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, become the man you are meant to be.